Lindsay Wynn. I'm so excited to have you on Confidence Conversations. How are you?
I'm so good, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, like, confidence is the root of what we do at Momotaro Apotheca. So we're very excited to be here.
Yeah, and you really are helping women feel more confident in their own skin through your self-care and sexual wellness products. But I want to know, what was the journey to founding your company?
Yeah, it's so funny because I don't think anybody really foresees their life as being like a vaginal health expert or like that's what they're going to spend the rest of their life doing. But truth be told, Momotaro Apotheca started because I needed it. I went through a series of infections from bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, UTIs, all caused from, like, trigger warning, kind of spicy. I had sex in a hot spring. Um, which sounds sexy, but it's not, or the idea of it, you're like out in the woods, cool. But, of course, it's a ton of bacteria, really not good for your vaginal microbiome. And yeah, it just became 6 months after that incident of back and forth through all of those things. And beyond the physiological symptoms I was experiencing and infections, my mental health started to suffer. Yeah, I think a lot of people know when you deal with these issues, there's a lot of shame and a lot of taboo around them. And so Momotaro was born out of not only addressing the infections, but really the industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I love that it comes from a personal need. But when did you find the courage and the confidence to be able to talk about that? Because it is something that we are so shamed for.
Gosh, I mean, it's still something I work on every day, but, when you think about and thinking about starting Momotaro, whether it's needing to find the right professionals or investors or community to bounce these ideas off, that you want to find a solution not only for yourself, but like for a broader audience, you have to begin to talk about it. And people are like, just like yourself, like, why are you doing this? And I was like, well, let me tell you about my yeast infection.
Yeah.
And, that sucks. It didn't feel good at first, but the more we began to share about this and the more I began to like seek other people and professionals that were experiencing the same issues I was or, things related to this, the more confident I became because it really became obvious that these issues are super, super common.
Yeah. And I think when we find our power to be able to vocalize what we're going through, we make change not just for ourselves, but for others. So, what are some of the ripple effects that you've noticed as you've come out with your story and launched your very successful plan?
Yeah. Well, I think, vaginal health and sexual health isn't one size fits all. So, what started with my issues really have grown into, a sea of all of the things people with vaginas deal with, right? So, it's not just UTIs, it's not just yeast infections, it's lichen sclerosis, it's symptoms of STIs, it's postpartum care, it's discomfort, itching, irritation around sex, clothing, exercise. Like, it's just a real broad, we're addressing a much broader understanding of what happens with regards to our vaginal health. And that my issue, I feel like, might have been the catalyst for starting this, but
Mhm.
each individual experience has really shaped the business, right? Like, we do so much support in the queer community because we create trans inclusive sexual health products. We do a ton of support in, Black maternal care because of the larger issues in the US around that. We do STI awareness, we do HIV, like all of these things, they're all connected. And
Yeah.
so it's been really cool that ripple effect has just shown and brought so much light to all of the other very human experiences we have. And I think that empathy and that connection is just creating such a beautiful network and understanding that we're all beautiful and we're different and we all go through these types of things, right? Like things that we maybe don't know about our own bodies or don't understand about our partners. And so that's been really important in terms of learning and growing and things I couldn't have foreseen when we first started this business.
Yeah. I know, like, one of the things that you'll notice, like, first off, when you go to your website is just how inclusive it is and embracing this aspect of body positivity, which I don't think that a lot of brands do. And it can become isolating where we have this system or structure for self-care, sexual wellness, but then so many women or people in general feel excluded.
Yeah, and it's funny. I feel like body positivity and like inclusivity has become kind of this like there's also there's almost a fakeness around it because everybody wants to do it, but they don't necessarily know how because they're like not having their conversation. So like I want to look inclusive or I want people to think that we are including, but like how are you actually doing it, right? It's beyond just showing an image. It's really backing it up and creating an ethos around it, right? Like I think humans are so smart, they're able to see through that. And so for us, those people you see on our website are generally speaking people who are contributing to our brand in some other capacity, not just with their body. They're writing about their issues. They have issues. They connect to it. They're sex workers. They're pharmacologists. There's dietitians. I mean, all of these people that are adding in some way other than just their image. We think it's really important to always speak from firsthand perspective. So somebody who's writing about, let's see, HSV, any sort of like herpes care, they're like, we have a sex educator who's like, yep, I'm HSV positive, and I went through this diagnosis, and this was my personal experience, and now here is my professional recommendation. And so I think that's really helped us as a brand create that like true sense of inclusivity.
I love that. And can others get that right? Like, how can we be more intentional about DEI so that it's not just like, I feel like we do really well with just like the diversity aspect of like, let's get different colors and sizes on the website. So we look like, we support all the hues, but like the equity and the inclusion are usually very limited. Like, how do we get that right?
I don't know what the answer is for all brands or all people, but I really think it requires that we ask ourselves the hard questions and say them out loud. And I think the biggest thing is admitting that we don't know things and listening, right? Like listen when people are talking, listen to their problems, their like we need to have a better understanding of people, what they want. And I think it's not about us, it's about the others. Does that make sense? It's kind of interesting to think about, right? Like, how do you do it right? It's like, it's not me. We just become the facilitator of what people want. We're servicing a community. And so we need to look to those people, both whether it's the way they look or the things they need, the inside and outside. And we need to figure out how to reflect that back to them, right?
Yeah.
And give that back to them. It's not just about visual diversity. It's about the emotional. It's about like what's inside too, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's a hard one. I'll have to think more on that, on how to for us, it's so much about it's included in our education, right? Because so much of what we do is also storytelling, and so I think that would be a really important part of brands doing a better job at really truly being inclusive.
Yeah, and I think you guys get it right, which is why I asked you. And I think from my perspective, I feel like equity is like leveling the playing field. So like how do we like educate or provide a space for different people? Like diversity is more so like allowing a seat at the table. And I think like that inclusion piece is like, let me pull out the chair at your seat at the table so that you know that you belong here. And I think that that's something that's really powerful that you guys are like intentional about doing. And I think it's difficult when you're coming from a space of like, I have a diagnosis that maybe I'm ashamed of and like destigmatizing that. So tell me about your work with STI specifically and like how you've seen like through your workers or the people who like you've interacted with destigmatizing that and feeling empowered again.
I mean, I think a lot of yeah, one, I love that you say leveling the playing field. This is something we talk about a lot in this business, that we want to create really like a holistic map that feels equal across pain, pleasure, symptomatic conditions, itching and irritation, that like that is all available because, we tend to think of sexual health and sexual health diagnosis. There's hierarchy there. Well, it's like nothing's wrong with me. I don't have an infection or like I don't have an STI or my vagina is perfect. I've never had, BV. And so you create that weird hierarchy and so pushing that away, I think is really important. And with STIs, I really think disclosure is important and understanding that these things are so common. When we're unable to like speak about things and give a name to them, it gives other people the opportunity to do so in our behalf, right? It gives them opportunity to shame us, to miseducate, right? This is why the representation piece is so important, and having that firsthand education. It's like, don't speak on my behalf. You don't know my experience. And so that that applies across all experiences within the sexual health sphere, our sex, our gender, our race, our bodily identities, our abilities. We like all of that plays into it. And yeah, STIs, I really think, I think there could be a larger systemic shift beyond having the individuals do all the labor. But my biggest suggestion to folks who are really dealing with this is to find your community. The internet, as dark as it can be and like kind of terrifying and negative, there's also so many beautiful people and platforms out there that will create safe spaces where things like disclosure and understanding and education around a diagnosis can be. I was somebody that, like, yeah, had a ton of misinformation around HSV diagnosis, and we found, sex educators and platforms and Instagram handles that were like, oh my God, like there was one that used to be called like my boyfriend has herpes, which was such a good one. And it was like from the opinion of a partner, and then you have firsthand perspectives. And so all of those things I think really play into the larger destigmatization, is talking about these things in an open way from different perspectives. I think sexual health, it's like you have the person, the individual, then you have the partner or the parent or the child, that network is what creates culture.
And that's so powerful. And you guys are making waves to help people feel more comfortable in that space. So we've talked about what you do and where you are and how you're making a difference. But I want to talk about how you got here as a founder, because there's one thing to have an idea and there's another thing to like bring it to life and really like see it grow. So tell me about that journey as a founder.
Yeah, well, Momotaro is almost 6 years old, which is pretty cool. Yeah, 6+ years old. And it really started with, of course, this one incident where I got like a yeast infection from Satan himself. Like it was the worst thing I've ever experienced. And then, of course, needing to find and create a solution was, it's really important. I needed it now, right? I wanted to like feel good right then. So we created this product, our salve, which is our hero product, which is kind of like this one size fits all product. You can throw it in your purse. It's beautiful. It's not embarrassing. It doesn't say like you have BV all over it, which is what a lot of the products in that space kind of feel like. And I wanted it to address my BV, my yeast infections, my UTIs, my itching, irritation, discomfort when these issues would arise. So we like needed that right then. And then we began to branch out. That's where like the brand began to form. We were giving this to other people because we were looking to professionals, both pharmacologists, naturopaths, OB-GYNs, chemists, all, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, to help us create these products. And that's when we really saw that there was a much bigger market. If I was feeling more included, like I said, because I was speaking with community that had the same experiences. I was talking with professionals that were affirming me that there was other patients similar to myself that would need these issues. And we're like, we can do this. We can absolutely be the people and the brand that people look to solve these issues. But how do we do that? And so been a lot of trial and error. Myself or my business partner didn't go to business school. His background is in biomedicine. Mine is in, I have a bachelor of fine arts. So we continue to educate ourselves. I went back and did a certificate program at Harvard Business School in economics. So we just kept piling. And 7 years later, we have, 7, 8 products. We do a ton of philanthropic work, and we've created this network through, this foundation of necessity to create our brand. And that's really what we continue to look to do, is to grow and build with our community, because it's how we've gotten here, right? We needed all of these people, all of these perspectives to help us learn. And we've definitely hit some bumps along the way, bad chemists that didn't make our products right, or manufacturers that didn't put the product in the right jars, like really silly things like that, I don't even know. I mean, I know business school wouldn't have given me the roadmap for. Like, there's so much trial and error in how you create a company. And I actually feel really passionate about finding your own way to a certain degree, right? Like there are tons of barrier to entry for women who need funding, or businesses in sexual health, because it's inherently taboo and people don't want to touch it. And so there's a lot of pieces there that, like, in the future, I'd love to help future founders with, give them those access points. But at the same time, um, learning by trial and error, I think is really good for creating a strong identity and a strong business and a strong, CEOs, C-suite team, like people that feel comfortable and confident in the industry they're working in and their brand specifically.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love your story and the fact that like you guys didn't have experience, but you were passionate enough to say like we're going to do this and figure it out along the way. But I know that sometimes that can be difficult to like do things by trial and error. Not that we don't all do that, but as a founder, it's like you're figuring things out and the peaks are great, but the valleys can be difficult. So how do you maintain confidence along the way?
I think you have to admit that there will be peaks and valleys, and that when you are in a valley, you have to know that you'll come out of it. It's like anything else in this world, right? Like you can't expect to be at like happiness homeostasis forever. Like our understanding of happiness and joy is because there is a binary of sadness and hardship, right? They don't exist. I mean, they wouldn't exist, I suppose, without one or the other. And so with work, like, I try and take it as a learning experience. Starting this business, a year or two before the pandemic, and it was really in its infancy at that point. It was not the business we have today. Um, it's been hard to have like a consistent roadmap to compare ourselves against, to like what is success for us. And so I just try to remain true to the mission, right? What we do, and that's help people and continue to create expansive products around vulvovaginal health, and not, yeah, like honor that community and look inward. That always really helps. Not comparing yourself to others is a really big one. You know, I came up in New York when like the Glossiers and Aways were having these massive direct to consumer booms, and I thought that's what I had to be. And I was like, I didn't have the money. I didn't come from inherited wealth. It was never going to happen for me. Why was I trying to be that person or that founder? Like I needed the time to learn. And so really like feeling confident in your own journey, um, and accepting the waves, just knowing that you'll get through it because you will is part of it. And I think for us specifically, on my team and I, where we were just talking about this, when we're feeling sad or having a hard day, we read our reviews.
Yeah.
we're like, okay, like I'm gonna go look at the staff reviews, and it's like this changed my life, and then you're like, okay, this is why we do this. That's the simple answer, right? You're like, okay, at the end of the day, the products work and they help people, and that really helps drive us when the economy is failing and our ads are being taken down because we make vaginal health products.
Yeah, that's key. I think you mentioned so many things, and I want to hone in on the comparison aspect because
Mhm.
whether it's us comparing our chapter one to someone else's chapter 10 or just apples and oranges, because like our journeys are so different from anyone else's, whether it's, I didn't have all of this like capital to start my company, or I don't have these resources, but like I have $2 to rub together and like, here's what I'm doing to like get this out there. How do you navigate that and stop yourself from comparing when like it's so easy to do with social media and networking and all of the things?
I mean, that's going to be like part of my life's work. Unfortunately, that's part of my Achilles heel. Like I grew up, I went to high school in a very rich town. I did not live in that town. I lived, you know, 10 minutes away in a neighborhood where at one point a meth lab blew up on my street, and so I was always looking at these things I didn't have, and at that time I really wanted, and I thought they would make me better, and I thought it would make me smarter, cooler, hotter, more valid. And as I've gotten older, I realized that's not true, right? There's a certain amount, and I wish I had the study handy, of money that you can make where capital makes a difference, right? And so like money doesn't buy happiness. It also doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you a good person, and it doesn't make you creative. Those are the things that I think really matter, right? When you tear everything back and you look at the things that make us human and that really truly connect us, and as a business make us successful, aside from, yes, there's obviously the capital is important, you know, I remind myself of those things, that I have value that doesn't have a dollar quantity, right? Those things are really, really important to me. And there's just also daily practices, right? You have to stay out of your social media sometimes. Unfollow people that don't make you happy, that make you feel jealous, that make you question yourself. Like, mute them if you don't want to unfollow them, so you don't see it. I mean, there's a certain level of comparison that can be considered inspiration, but think about it for yourself. Look inward. Is this toxic or is this healthy, right? Like, try and flip it and reverse it. Like, okay, I see this business or I see this person. Am I inspired by them or am I jealous of them? And have that conversation with yourself. Like, think about the things that truly, truly make you happy. Is it a new pair of shoes or is it like, doing some yoga, like fresh air on the beach? I've looked a lot to science, to help me better understand the things that actually make me happy. This one's trendy right now, but like grounding, right? You go outside, you put your feet in the grass, and it has a positive ion exchange, and it lowers your blood. Um, like, lowers your tension and creates serotonin. And those are things I'm, oh, I can do this and this is going to help me. Not buying the shoes, not this accolade. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
complete answer, but yeah, I mean, I just think you have to kind of like, you have to remind yourself how small the world and how those things. And I actually think the pandemic was really good for that reason. I'm like, oh, all of this can be taken away, like, do what makes you happy. And I think the rest will follow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we have similar upbringings, I would say. And so it is very difficult when you've been brought up in this environment where like you're kind of not forced to compare, but like you see the difference. And so I think it's really helpful that you shared that aspect of your story. And so we,
I think that can be a superpower if you relate to it. I was once so embarrassed to tell people where I was from. And now I'm like, you know what? This is where I'm from. And look what I have accomplished. And like, look at all of the things that I have learned because I had to drop out of high school because of this and find a different way to college because of that. And like, I mean, it's a superpower.
it is.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows that there's no one right path or journey. And like when we look at success, there's like these pathways and we think it's like this linear road and we go like this, but really there's like all these dips along the way and like we go up, but it's you can't compare yourself to others because like someone could be like a millionaire by 25 and deceased by 50, or maybe that's not the case, but like we're constantly comparing like, oh, maybe it took me longer to get my first job, but I was able to move along more quickly. It doesn't matter. Like wherever you are is where you're supposed to be, and that's your journey and your timeline. And I feel like we just need to realize that and like settle into the current moment.
Yeah, I mean that expectation of like linear hierarchy and like being on this escalator to success is so false. It is the journey. Like, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like, you know, I think especially in the US, we really praise overworking. Millennials are really toxic with it, where it's like hustle culture, and rest is so important. Like, having time for your creative brain and enjoying it along the way and making space for learning is I really think part of the future, and how we're going to have cool businesses, successful businesses, is people that are really being honest with themselves. A lot of the models on how to create a business don't work anymore, like this traditional structure and pay to play and throw performance ad dollars at it doesn't work. Like, you need to be yourself, you need to be authentic, you need to enjoy the ride. Like, or
Yeah.
what else is there?
So how did you move from like hustle culture and feeling like you have to be on all the time and like follow these steps and do these things to like, all right, we're going to do this journey our way? Was there a moment?
There's a few things, right? So like, one, beginning of this business, people were not receptive necessarily to these ideas. Like, a lot of people didn't realize that BV, yeast infections, these things were so common, and especially because the majority of people and capital partners I was looking towards were like old white men that just didn't get it, right? And that's just statistics, right? VCs are these types of folks. They don't get it. They're not young women. They're not diverse. They don't usually come from diverse backgrounds, et cetera. And that is changing a little bit, but at this point, um, only less than 2% of capital is deployed to women at this point. So, there's obviously barrier to entry. So you have to get creative. Um, and as we moved through, months, years of existing and figuring out how to exist, I really realized that it was almost to my benefit as a founder and as a CEO to be like learning along the way. And so that became really paramount, especially I feel like the sexual health industry has changed so much in the last 5 years that we've been able to change and iterate and ebb and flow with it and learn how people want to talk about vulvovaginal health. I always say to my business partner, I'm like, we can't shove this down people's throats, right? It is changing now. People are accepting this idea, but 6, 7 years ago, people were like, ew, feminine care, like, you don't need to douche. And I'm like, that's not what this is. Like, this is about like, soothing symptoms of or treating these conditions in ways that are plant-based. So like it's just another option. And so that to me, I think has been a really cool part and in like knowing and then honoring what this journey has been for me and how it's created a stronger business is kind of that low and slow percolation, right? Like the what is it, the like you become an expert at 10,000 hours. That's true, right? Like you need to spend the time. You can't just pretend to have it all figured out. Otherwise, you're going to hit a bunch of walls and you're going to waste a ton of money. You have to test, you have to iterate. And if you have a little bit of leeway, which now at this point, I'm like, I feel like I could, if I had all the capital in the world, I could turn on a lot of wins, but that's not my journey. So, so be it.
Yeah, thank you for the transparency around that. And this is confidence conversation. So I want to know like what confidence means to you.
Um, I think confidence really starts with peace.
Mm,
Sounds so squishy and whatnot, but it is. You have to start from this place of like of love and self care, and where you're like, I feel good, and like whether it's in the way you look, the way you feel, but it really starts with inner peace. There are some days that when I wake up, I'm like, oh my god, I look hot, fuck
mhm.
yeah, my business is amazing. And then other days it's just more of a quiet piece, a quiet homeostasis. But I can't have those big boosts without a strong foundation. And so that does require those daily practices, those meditative aspects, taking out social media sometimes, being outside, doing yoga, like eating healthy, being around people that inspire me because that lifts you up. That creates serotonin, it creates oxytocin, which is just like then you're like, yes, look at me, I'm amazing, I'm magnetic, and everything else falls into place.
I love that. And what positive affirmations would you give to individuals who are looking to boost their confidence?
Affirmations. I mean, I am pretty. That's an interesting one. Boost your into boost. I mean, like any positive affirmation that resonates with you, if you're looking in the mirror, is going to be helpful. Like, what is that? Maybe it's addressing the thing that you feel the worst about.
Mm,
Like today I'm feeling ugly, so I'm gonna be like, I'm so beautiful, I'm hot, I'm sexy, I'm a piece of ass, I'm whatever it is. So like, find those pieces and like break through them, and and know. I think maybe this isn't so much an affirmation, but know that everybody is self conscious,
mm,
everybody has their things, and like speaking to them, right? We talked about this a little bit with disclosure, gives power to them, gives power to be like, yes, like this is me. Like my father always used to say, the truth shall set you free.
mhm.
And like sometimes I'm just like, yes, like I need to tell people what I'm thinking, and that relief makes you feel light, makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel confident, because it's out in the world.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really nice to talk about this in this way. It's I think this conversation really encompasses what it means to be confident and what it means to start a business, because it really is like a holistic thing. For me, you are your business, right? I'm talking about my yeast infection that I had 7 years ago all the time, and our worlds are so interconnected now, right? We aren't just like, I think post pandemic, we've really brought people into our homes and like into our hearts and our humanness. And so I think it's really good for people to understand it. It really is a holistic understanding and a holistic practice to start a business and to talk about these things. It kind of has to come from every angle.
Yeah. So before I let you go, any final words of wisdom that you want to share with the confidence community?
Yeah, when it comes to sexual health, everything from pain to pleasure, it goes back to what I just said. Like, speak your truth, talk about what you want, what you don't want, what you like, how you feel. If you're not feeling self conscious, like with sexual health, vaginal health, like you can be intimate. If you have a partner that doesn't respond, you know, reasonably, kick them to the curb. Like, that's not what you want in your life. Like, I think everybody should, give themselves agency to talk about the things that they need and they love and they want when it comes to sexual health.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for your time and for joining me on Confidence Conversations.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for having me.